do His will. That's a choice that each of us make if we succumb to those temptations. And so He is not going to have that power to force us to do that. And so we rely upon the strength of the Lord in order to stand against the wiles of the devil. And so we understand that Satan does have wiles, he does have schemes, but we do not have to be ignorant of those things. We can understand what those are. We can be prepared to battle those schemes and to confront Satan at each opportunity or each instance that he's going to take the opportunity to do battle with us. And so we need to be prepared. We talked about how, most temptations fall in one of three categories of, blinding people with false doctrine. And so we see this a lot. We see it in denominations. We also see it within the church, and how people will come in and they will try to promote this false doctrine. And so Satan will win many souls as they are being drawn away by this false doctrine. He also will entice us to indulge in the desires of the flesh. And so we see this constantly. These things are battling against us, these desires of the flesh. They're all around us no matter where we go. And so Satan is going to try to entice us to partake in these different desires of the flesh. But he's also going to use persecution on those who are trying to do what's right. And this persecution can come in many different forms. It doesn't necessarily have to be physical persecution. It could be emotional. It could be, just someone making fun of you or teasing you, things like that. It could have something to do with your job in the workplace. It could be financial persecution, any number of things. And so a lot of times, and they may not necessarily be persecution. I was thinking about this morning. It could be just financial hardship that Satan is taking those opportunities. It might not necessarily be in the form of persecution, but it could be just hardship in general that's going to tempt us to do things that we might not do. Maybe steal something or cheat someone in some way. Tax season's here. Probably most of us have already done our taxes, but there's that temptation to cheat on your taxes. Things like that for that financial gain. Maybe you could use the extra money, or you don't have the money to pay your tax bill. So there's these hardships, these persecutions, those type things Satan is going to use in order to try to win you over, to get you to partake in these things that you shouldn't partake in. And so he is very crafty as he does these things. And so we need to understand what Satan is doing. And so we understand that the peril of Satan is ever present. He's always here. Tim made the great comment last week. Even in this congregation, Satan can be present trying to pull people away, trying to sow discord, trying this false doctrine that we spoke about. All of those things, Satan is always present. And so we need to understand that. We really don't get a break, no matter what it is. Satan can take the most pure, the most good thing and try to twist it in a way that would suit his purposes. And so we need to always be on the lookout. Anything that is good, that can be used in a good way, even spreading the gospel, Satan can take that and he can twist that and he can turn it into something evil. And so we need to always be on guard, knowing that Satan is ever present, and we are living in this battleground, in this constant state of battling evil, watching out for this force that's going to come in, that's going to try to pull our families away, pull this congregation away, and understand that. Any other comments along those lines? That kind of brings us up to date to where we are as we continue our study this morning. All right, in verse 12 there we have the statement, "For we do not wrestle against flesh and blood." We do not wrestle against flesh and blood. A lot of the battles that we think of here on earth are battles that are this conflict between flesh and blood, these physical battles that are waged in the different wars and in the different conflicts and maybe even personal conflicts. We have the the saying, you coming to blows. And so that's a physical blow, physical battle that you're doing there. But this battle with Satan is not against flesh and blood. It's not this physical battle. We cannot measure his might as in carnal warfare by the number of soldiers, tanks, planes, or ships. This is not the type of battle that we are talking about. This is a spiritual battle and one that is not physical. In 2 Corinthians chapter 10, verses 3 through 5, it says, "For though we walk in the flesh, we do not war according to the flesh. For the weapons of our warfare are not carnal, but mighty in God, for pulling down strongholds, casting down arguments and every high thing that exalts itself against the knowledge of God, bringing every thought into captivity to the obedience of Christ." And so our weapons are not carnal, they're not physical, they are spiritual, but they are still powerful. And so we are going to go through the different types of armor, Lord willing, and the weapons that God has supplied us with. And these are not tangible weapons. He compares them to tangible things that we can associate them with in our minds. But these are spiritual weapons. But they are powerful weapons. They are mighty weapons. And they are everything that we need in order to battle Satan and to become victorious against him. But still, we must not underestimate the power of Satan and his agents, because they have some very powerful tools as well. Things, they have both carnal things, physical things, as well as these non-tangible things that we can see, such as greed, covetousness, selfishness, these desires, these inordinate desires. Satan has those as well, and we can't touch and feel those things, but they are ever present, and they are powerful things as well. A lot of times, those type things turn into physical battles, because that's where Satan wants to turn our focus to. These, if he can get us going and fighting physically, then he's won the battle as well. And so both sides have these intangible weapons that can be used, but our weapon, our primary source of strength and ability to battle Satan is spiritual in nature. And so we need to understand that. We need to recognize that. Even though we might use physical things such as the written word, God's word, is written and preserved for us in many forms today, both physical, digital, but we might use that, but the power is not in that physical page. The power is in the knowledge and the truth that is displayed on those physical pages. And so we have some very powerful tools to use. And so we cannot stand without the inexhaustible strength which emanates from the Lord. That is where we are going to get our power and our strength in order to battle these things that Satan's going to throw at us. So we do not wrestle against flesh and blood. Any comments on that section there?
Shane, those are some concepts there in verse 12 that I don't understand, like principalities, against powers, against the rulers of the darkness, which I do understand to the degree that these are powers that I cannot fight. I cannot stand up against. So we go back to what one of Gerald's favorite passages is. I can do all things through Christ, which strengtheneth me. Mm-hmm. What, some things? No, all things. And all things would include fighting against these principalities, powers, and rulers of darkness. Because we cannot do that by ourselves.
Yeah.
And of course, the Lord, though, would require, as Sid would say, self-control. Require self-control on my part and doing my part, and let the Lord do the rest.
All right. And Bill, I was hoping you were going to explain all those things to us today, because that's our next section. As we look at this next section, how that we are battling against principalities, against powers, against the rulers of the darkness of this age, against spiritual hosts of wickedness. And so this battle that we are waging are against these type of things. And as Bill has pointed out, I don't really understand what all this means. Satan wields intangible strength in realms of authority in this world. And so he wields this strength, and it's not tangible. It's not necessarily something that we can see with our own eyes. We can see it maybe in the results, the things that happen because of this strength or these weapons that he has. But this is not a tangible thing that you and I can see with our own eyes. No doubt he uses wicked rulers to accomplish his goals, to pursue the avenues that he wants to use to cause people to be pulled away. And certainly he does use wicked rulers. He may be given authority in the fields of education. We look at our education system in so many parts of this country, not only in the secondary education, in the colleges and universities, but also in the high schools and in the elementary schools and in kindergarten. We see his purposes being promoted all throughout education. And so in some sense, he wields some authority within our education system, within our government. We see the results of his power when things like abortion and those type things are being promoted and being approved and being practiced and carried out and legalized in a lot of instances, as well as other things. Once you have all these sins, as far as drinking and drugs, illegal drugs, recreational drugs, those type of things being legalized, we see Satan's power being used in these areas. He undertakes any endeavor that would influence the world to turn from the Lord to him. And so he is a very powerful being. And like Bill stated, I don't know that we can really understand what each of these terms is and what are and what they represent. But I think the point, we can still get the point, and the point is driven home that he's powerful, yet we have the ability to battle him in every one of these instances. And so we need to understand that he's present, he's in these realms, he's all throughout our life, in our government, in our schools, in our places of employment, even in the congregations where we worship and pray. Satan can be there. And so we need to be watching for him and understanding that this is a very dangerous thing for us. And so I think reading this passage should go a long way in frightening us. As far as, when you're afraid of something, you're going to be watching out for it, right? And I've used this example numerous times in teaching and otherwise. Many of us are afraid of snakes. And so this time of year, when we start walking through tall grass, when we start going into areas where snakes like to be, we are watching. We are careful that we are not putting our foot on a snake. And so that's the same sort of attitude we should have when it comes to Satan. Every step we take within the congregation, within our family, at our place of employment, no matter where, when we take that step, we need to be watching for Satan and make sure that he's not using us to fulfill his purposes. And we're not succumbing to his devices and his way of gaining power over us and pulling us away from God. I'd be more than happy to yield the floor to anybody who would like to offer a better explanation of any of these things. I'd be more than happy to listen to that.
Think about the passage, not being rich, not being noble, not being so forth.
Yeah.
So that people in high places would tend to be less spiritual minded.
Yeah, Rex was stating the passage that speaks about not many rich, not many noble, not many in high places. That passage are going to, they succumb to Satan more often, and they're less likely to be working for God. And so, these people that are ruling over us, power just does something to people. And it could be power over just 2 or 3 children. And sometimes we see people that goes to their head. But especially when you get into the upper echelons of ruling and leading nations and being in charge of vast armies, there's just something about that power that corrupts. And it's very difficult for most people to be in charge of that or be in that position and not succumb to Satan, because it's just something about it. Any other comments? Yes, Tim.
Stan, I don't have any answers for your question, but earlier in chapter 3 of Ephesians 3 and verse 8, read a couple of verses. The Bible refers to himself. To me, who am less than the least of all the saints, this grace was given that I should preach among the Gentiles the essential gifts of Christ, and to make all see what is the fellowship of the mystery, which from the beginning of the ages has been hidden in God who created all things, in Christ Jesus, to the intent that now the manifold wisdom of God might be known by the church to the principalities and powers in heavenly places, according to eternal purpose, which he accomplished in Christ Jesus our Lord. The same question that you and Bill talked about, I wrestled with, thinking I could figure it out. But there's some place in a realm, in another world, in heaven, where some created beings are rulers, and they have dominion, and they have bounds of where they're allowed to rule. But we are participants in God's plan to make his multifaceted power known to those rulers by the church through his son. So we play a role. I think we can understand our role even if we don't understand all the details about what's going on. But through the church, or by the church and through his son, God is driving home a point to these beings and these powers that he created.
I appreciate that comment. I don't understand all that as well, but I was just thinking as you were commenting how that, Satan tries to keep us focused on here. It's all about what we're living today and not about our eternal existence, and maybe not about those places that you're speaking of. But, our existence is more than Albertville, Alabama. It's more than our homes. It's these things that we are doing have eternal consequences. And so we need to understand that. But Satan's going to want to keep you focused on earth and on these physical things. And when he does that, then he's winning the eternal battle. Any other comments there? All right, and that was our next section there, and I didn't have a lot more to say about this idea of in heavenly places. And so, the comment that the writer of our study guide says, we are fighting in a spiritual war against a dangerous enemy, one who rules not only in the sphere of this world's moral darkness, but also in heavenly or spiritual places. And so he directs you back to Ephesians chapter 1 and verse 3, where he made some comments there, which is basically kind of what we've already discussed there. And so, all this would include, a lot of things, false teachers who confuse the saved and begin to try to distort the gospel. You look at 1 John chapter 4 and verse 1, it says, Beloved, do not believe every spirit, but test the spirits whether they are of God, because many false prophets have gone out into the world. And so here you have, in this passage, speaking about testing the spirits and false spirits as well as true spirits. And so there is some realm, that this language is used not only here, but in other places, speaking of these type things. And so, as Tim said, we're in this battle that affects more than what we are here in this place in this moment, so to speak. Any other comments along those lines before we move on? One thing we need to understand is Satan is real, and I think we've done a lot of speaking about that, but I think this needs to be really impressed upon us, that we understand and that we believe that Satan is real. When his name means adversary. Satan is adversary. And Revelations 1 or 12 there and verse 9 says that. It says, "So the great dragon was cast out, the serpent of old, called the devil and Satan, who deceives the whole world, who he is cast to the earth, and his angels were cast out with him." And so, we see, when we're introduced to him in the Bible, he's in the form of a serpent who is opposing God's way by tempting Eve to eat of the fruit. And so this is when we're first introduced to Satan. And so it's this physical portrayal of Satan as this serpent, but he's tempting Eve to go against God's will. And when we see him in the last book of the Bible, as we just read, he is still the adversary opposing God and his servants. And so he is an adversary. He's our adversary. And so whether or not we want to accept him as an adversary, it doesn't change that fact. If we refuse to accept him as an adversary, he's still our adversary, and he's won. He's pulled us away by our attitude toward him. He is our adversary. He is our enemy. He is truly a tempter who constantly goes about seeking whom he may devour. 1 Peter chapter 5 and verse 8, here again paints a very vivid picture of Satan, how we're encouraged to be sober, be vigilant, because you're an adversary. The devil walks about like a roaring lion, seeking whom he may devour. And so we have this illustration of this lion. I know that's not something we often encounter in the streets of our city, or never. I mean, maybe one might get loose from one of the zoos or animal sanctuaries, but it's not very likely that we are going to encounter a lion. But in the countries where they have those, they take them seriously. When you've got a lion in the village or in the town, that is something that you're warned against. The word gets out pretty quickly. Everybody's trying to keep people safe, because you've got this lion prowling, looking to devour people. And that is what Satan is. He is prowling our town, our world, our homes, our congregation here. He may be walking up and down this aisle this morning, looking for people. I say he is. He's looking for people to pull away. And so you just imagine this lion just weaving in and out, looking for someone, looking for the opportunity for you to be weak, to be pulled away. That way he can grab you by the throat and drag you out this door. And that's the picture that we need to envision as we go about trying to battle Satan and the things that he is doing. Jesus describes him as a murderer and a liar. You look at John chapter 8 and verse 44. It says, You are of your father the devil, and the desires of your father you want to do. He is a murderer from the beginning. He does not stand in the truth, because there is no truth in him. When he speaks a lie, he speaks from his own resources, for he is a liar and the father of it. And so Satan is a murderer. He's a liar. He's evil. He's looking to pull you away, to murder you spiritually, to separate you from God. And he's a very evil person, and he's very real. We need to understand that he's not going to approach us wearing this red suit and carrying this pitchfork that we can easily identify him. You know, the world, especially our media, tries to portray him in this fashion. That we see this guy dressed in red and carrying a pitchfork and maybe with some horns and a tail. And so, oh, there's Satan. You know, he's approaching. I need to be watching because he's here. He's not going to look like that. He's going to look like our friend. He's going to look maybe like our close confidant. He may look like, I'm not saying anything against Brother Hall, but he may look like our preacher. I'm not accusing you of anything. But we need to be watchful because that may be what he looks like. That may be what he looks like. And so we need to understand that he's going to be wearing all these different outfits. He's going to look differently, and he's going to change according to what's going to be the most advantageous for him to try to pull us away, to try to ensnare us. And so he masquerades as an angel of light. 2 Corinthians chapter 11, verses 13 through 15 says, "For such are false prophets, deceitful workers, transforming themselves into apostles of Christ. And no wonder, for Satan himself transforms himself into an angel of light. Therefore it is no great thing if his ministers also transform themselves into ministers of righteousness, whose end will be according to their works." And so this is no great thing, and it should not be a surprise to us that the ministers of Satan are going to be disguised as ministers of righteousness. And those who are of any age have seen this, where you have people who portray themselves as ministers of righteousness, and when you get down to it, they are ministers of Satan. And they're here to pull people away to their own schemes, their own devices. And so we should be very, very vigilant to be looking out for Satan and his devices. He is the God of this world. He can provide temporal pleasures. He can provide riches. He can provide worldly honor. But all of this is part of the big lie that he's trying to sell us. Satan is trying to sell us a lie. And all of these riches, this honor, these temporary pleasures are part of that lie. 2 Corinthians chapter 4, verses 3 and 4 says, "But even if our gospel is veiled, it is veiled to those who are perishing, whose minds the God of this age has blinded, who do not believe lest the light of the gospel, the glory of Christ, who is an image of God, should shine on him." And so he's offering us these treasures, these riches, but they only last as long as this earth lasts, as long as we are alive on this earth. And he offers us nothing that's permanent, nothing that's eternal. Unless it's eternal punishment. That's the only thing that he offers us that's eternal, is eternal punishment. But anything good that's eternal, he does not offer that. Only God offers that. When death comes, his victims will suffer eternal sorrow, eternal darkness, and it's something that's going to last forever. And it's going to be bad. But what he does is he blinds us to eternity. He keeps us focused on the here and now. He keeps us focused, maybe, like we said, on our financial problems. He keeps us focused on trying to keep up with our neighbors and maybe the cars that they are driving and the vacations that they are going on and things like that. He keeps us focused on that. He keeps us focused on maybe the promotion that our coworker got that we were skipped over. He keeps us focused on those things and keeps us blinded to eternity. But we need to be focused on eternity and blinded to all of these other things. And while they affect us, and I'm not saying we give no concern to those type of things, because those of us who provide for our families, certainly we've got to be aware and do the best we can to provide for our families. But that's not our priority. Our priority is to make it to heaven, to help our family make it to heaven, and then others along with us, those of our families and friends and anyone we come in contact with. And so we must put things in priority. There's a lot of good things, as we said, that Satan will use for evil. He can take the best of things and turn them into something evil. And so we must watch out for that. Any other comments on this section, verses 10 through 12? We've got just a few minutes. We can probably dip our toe into verse 13, but if anybody hasn't, yes, Tim.
I can share a conversation that Todd and I have had several times over the last few years. It's easy for us to sit here, if we've been Christians for a while, read these verses and feel real confident about our salvation. Okay, we know about Satan, and we know about him and his desire to devour. How many of us, if our children were in the backyard and it's fenced, would you say, oh, well, there's a coyote out there walking up and down the fence, or a wolf, or a lion? How many of us would leave our children there and say, oh, well, there's a fence?
Yeah.
While we can be confident in our salvation, our children are in the classrooms, and that lion will get our kids if we're not careful.
Yeah.
That lion is bold and brazen. And there's a verse in Luke 22, verse 31. This is where Satan, it seems, in some fashion, went to the Lord and made a request. And the Lord said, Simon, Simon, indeed Satan has asked for you that he may sift you as wheat. He will do anything, even it seems, to ask the Lord, hey, can I have shame? Let me have shame. We know he did it with Job.
Yeah.
There was that give and take there. But if there's a wolf outside the fence and your children are playing, kill it. Get your kids to safety and kill the wolf.
Yeah.
And I'm talking in a spiritual warfare type thing. Let's not be complacent. Our kids are under the same threat that we're under.
Very good point. Very good point.
Changes to go along with that and put this verse, what Tim just said, verse 11, stand against the wiles of the devil. You just read 2 Corinthians 4:4. I was thinking about this all applied so far. Satan is described as the god of this world. That means he has every tool at his disposal. So just as soon as we think we have it under control and we think we are standing against the devil, take heed, for he who stands, take heed lest he fall. Because as soon as we think that we have stood against the devil, well, he started it up again. It's kind of constant spiritual warfare. It never stops, as you reiterated. It is, as soon as we think that we've got it under control, that's what we're messing with.
The picture I was thinking when you were describing that is an old cartoon where maybe something's leaking and somebody's trying to put a finger in it, and then it starts over here, and you think you've got it, but every time you turn around, there's another leak. There's another place where Satan's getting in, and so we have to be sure that we are watching for those leaks, because they can do a lot of damage. We recently had some water damage at our home. We still have it. Still waiting on the insurance, but it was a small leak. But that small leak over a little bit of time has caused some issues, and it's going to cause some pretty major remodel in our home. And it was hidden in a place that we couldn't see it. And until it got out into an area where all of a sudden the floors were warping and bucking up, it was kind of too late. I mean, we stopped it, but yet the damage was done. And so that's Satan. We need to be watching and watching for those little instances and checking everything. And because he's very, very crafty. Any other comments? Yeah, he keeps changing. Yeah. When we think we've got him in one, we understand him here. He's probably 2 steps ahead of us and already planning his next attack. And he changes all the time. Is somebody else, Bill?
I believe a good example of what you were about previously about how the devil uses good things and turns it into evil.
Yeah.
And a good example of that was the children of Israel. And all those people back then saw all 10 miracles that God had performed against the Egyptians. They saw that. And then they got to the point to where they glorified his name. All right? Here comes the time where they're going through the Red Sea and being chased by the Egyptians. Well, they cry out, and in response, or in 1 or 2 other places, there in Numbers and Exodus, is the children will say, well, why did you bring us out here to this wilderness where we could be staying in Egypt and eating to our full? Or have the water that we want? Or have the safety that we want? Or did you bring us out here to dig graves for our bodies? Well, I mean, the food over in Egypt was a good thing. They were full and all that. But they didn't put any trust in God. And even after seeing those 10 plagues, they lost their trust in God immediately. And that was from Satan.
Yeah. Any other comments? I think it's about time for the bell to ring here in just a minute or two, so we won't go ahead with the next section. But Lord willing, next week we will begin looking at verses 13 through 20, looking at the armor that God has given us to battle Satan, and looking at the power that He has placed in our hands to do this battle, to go against Satan, and to be victorious, because we can be victorious. This is, we've talked about a lot of dangerous things, and this, maybe this class here has been, maybe it's discouraged you, thinking, well, there's no way I can win. Well, Lord willing, next week we're going to talk about how we can win and the weapons that God has given us to be victorious, because we can be victorious. God has assured us of that. He's given us what we need. And so these things are powerful, they are useful, and they are things that we can use every day. In every waking moment that we have, these things are at our disposal. And no matter what we are confronting, whether it's, it could be even a physical confrontation. Someone is coming at us physically. We still have these weapons, not to battle them physically, but to battle them in a way that's going to preserve our soul. And we may lose that physical battle, but we can win the spiritual battle. And so these tools are at our disposal at all times. And so, Lord willing, next week, we will have a very encouraging class speaking about this power that God has given to us to battle this powerful enemy. And so we are assured victory. There's very few battles here on earth where you are absolutely assured victory if you do one thing. I've read a lot of historical novels and true history, and one thing that generals state is, you can have the best battle plans in the world, but when that battle starts, everything changes, and everything can fall to pieces. But what God has given us is much better than that. If we go by the battle plan that God has put into place, we are assured victory no matter what Satan does. And so we can take confidence in that. And so, Lord willing, we will look at that next week. Thank you so much for your attention and for those who commented.